Hello everyone and welcome to this video channel Science Class-Viii. Today we are going to study chapter number 9, Reproduction in Animals. It is in textbook page number 125. Let's see. Textbook page number 125, chapter number 9, Reproduction in Animals. In this chapter, we will learn why do animals reproduce. Animals reproduce in order to maintain the continuity of life. So, if the animals do not reproduce, then there will be no new generation for each and every species. So, chapter number 9, Reproduction in Animals. Let's see. First, let's try to read all these things, and in the related parts I will explain more. So, let's see it. Do you recall the processes of digestion, circulation and respiration which you have studied in your previous classes? These processes are essential for the survival of every individual. You have also learned about the process of reproduction in plants. Reproduction is essential for the continuation of a species. Imagine what would have happened if organisms had not reproduced. So here we learn that so many processes, that is called life processes, are going on in a living organism. It's a living thing. Say maybe digestion, circulation, respiration. All these activities are metabolic activities. We know as metabolic activities. These metabolic activities, also known as life process, are still going on in a living thing. So, these processes are quite essential for the survival of every individual. And reproduction is also part of the life process. So, we will learn from this chapter about the reproduction in animals. So, reproduction is essential for the continuation of a species. So, you will realize that reproduction is very important as it ensures the continuation of similar kinds of individuals, generation after generation. So, from one generation to next generation, similar kinds of individuals will produce. So, this is called continuation of similar kinds of individuals. So, you have already learned in your previous class about reproduction in plants. In this chapter, we shall learn how reproduction takes place in animals. In animals, how reproduction takes place. So, in this chapter number 9, Reproduction in Animals, we will learn about the reproduction in animals and how reproduction takes place in animals. Here, modes of reproduction. Simply, we may learn sexual reproduction as well as asexual reproduction. These are the modes of reproduction in animals. So, let's continue. You have seen the young ones of different animals. Yes, we have already seen young ones of different animals. The young ones of, say, human, young ones of cat, young ones of dog, and young ones of cow. So many animals called their young ones we have seen. And try to name some of the young ones by completing table 9.1 shown in examples at serial number 1 to 5. It is shown in the next. Okay, for now let's continue this thing. You must have seen the young ones of various animals being born. So, can you tell how chicks and caterpillars are born? How are kittens and puppies born? Do you think that these young ones look the same before they were born as before they were born? Do you think that these young ones look the same before they were born as they do now? Let us find out. So we have seen so many types of young ones in our surrounding. Some are born as young one, and some they are the mother animal lay egg, and when the egg hatches, after hatching, then young ones comes from the egg. So animals can be oviparous. Those animals, they lay eggs, they are called oviparous. And those animals, they give birth to young ones, they are called viviparous animals. So here in table 9.1, here serial number 1, name of the animal is human. It is given as human. And young one, the name of the young one of the human is baby. And for cat, the young baby, the young one of cat is kittens. And dog, the young one of dog is puppies. And for butterfly, the young one of butterfly is caterpillar. And for hen, the young one of hen is chick. And for cow, the young one of cow is calf, C-A-L-F, calf. And the young one of frog is tadpole. We know tadpole. So let's continue. Just as in plants, there are two modes by which animals reproduce. Animals reproduce in two modes. These are number 1, sexual reproduction, and number 2, asexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. By means of these two modes, that means two methods of reproduction, most of the animals reproduce in these two modes. So first, let's try to learn sexual reproduction. Try to recall reproduction in plants, which you studied in class 7. You will remember that plants that reproduce sexually have male and female reproductive parts. Can you name these parts? In animals also, males and females have different reproductive parts or organs. Like plants, the reproductive parts in animals also produce gametes that fuse to form a zygote. It is the zygote which develops into a new individual. So here, let's see, in class 7, we have learned about the reproduction in plants that reproduce sexually. So in most of the flowering plants, they reproduce sexually. And can you name these parts in the plants they reproduce sexually? The name of the parts we can mention, say ovary, and say in the case of the female reproductive part, ovary. That means gynoecium is there, and in the case of the male, androecium, or say we know as pistils are there. So like plants, the reproductive parts in animals also produce gametes. In the animals, the reproductive parts in animals also reproduce gametes that fuse to form a zygote. Say in the case of the animals, in the males, male gametes, and in the female gametes are there. In the male gametes, we know as testis, whereas in the case of the female gametes are known as, say, ovary. So ovary produce egg, and the testis produce sperm cell. So like the plants, in the case of the animals also, they produce gametes, and when the gametes fuse, and it forms a zygote. So it is the zygote which develops into a new individual, and this type of reproduction beginning from the fusion of male and female gametes is called sexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction is nothing, it is the fusion of male and female gametes. And after the fusion of the male and female gametes, a zygote is formed. Then from the zygote, new type of cell divisions begins from the zygote, and there is some processes are going on inside the zygote, and new young baby is produced in that way. So let us find out the reproductive parts. So in the next page, let's see. In humans, and study the process of reproduction in them. So here in this page we have seen reproductive parts of male and female. Male reproductive organs. First, let's try to learn. The male reproductive organs include a pair of testes. In the singular, it is written as testis. So two sperm ducts and a penis. In figure number 9.1, it is shown here. Testis is here, and this is the penis, and a sperm duct is shown here. This sperm duct is known as vas deferens. So let's continue. The testis produce the male gametes called sperms. Millions of sperms are produced by the testis. Look at figure number 9.2, which shows the picture of a sperm. Though the sperms are very small in size, each has a head, a middle piece, and a tail. Thus, it appears to be a single cell. So here, figure number 9.2, the structure of human sperm cell is shown here, and this is head part of the cell, sperm cell, and this is the middle piece, and this is the tail. So in the single cell, different regions are labeled here. So the structure, the precise structure of the human sperm cell is shown here. So each sperm is a single cell with all the usual cell components. So human sperm cell you have seen here, and what purpose does the tail in a sperm serve? So in the tail part of the sperm cell, what purpose it serves? Yes, this is question. So in the correct answer, the purpose of this and the tail part of the sperm is it takes place in the movement of the cell, in the movement of this whole sperm cell. The sperm cell, the tail part of the sperm cell, responsible for the movement. Okay, next, female reproductive organs. Let's see, female reproductive organs. The female reproductive organs are a pair of ovaries, oviducts, that is known as fallopian tubes, and the uterus. Figure number 9.3, uterus, it is shown here. the ovary produces female gametes. That is called ova, also known as eggs. So, in this figure number 9.3, female reproductive organs in humans is shown here. So, uterus, also known as womb, is shown here, and this is the ovary, right ovary, left ovary. One pair is there, and this is the duct, oviduct, where the eggs, mature eggs, will come out through this oviduct. So this oviduct is also known as the fallopian tubes. So this is the structure of the female reproductive organs in humans. Now let's continue. Female gametes also called ova or eggs. So in figure number 9.4 we have seen, in human beings, a single mature egg is released into the oviduct by one of the ovaries every month. Uterus is the part where development of the baby takes place. Like the sperm, an egg is also a single cell. So here you have just seen the female reproductive organs in humans in this picture. So every month, from either ovary, maybe right ovary or left ovary, a single mature egg cell is released from the ovary through this oviduct, also known as fallopian tube. That mature egg, when fused with the sperm cells, then fertilization takes place in the fallopian tube. So ovary is also mature egg or ova is also one single cell. So here figure number 9.4 you have seen the human ovum. Human ovum, a single cell is shown here. This is the centrally located part is the nucleus of the cell. Now let's see. Buzo recalls that the size of eggs in animals varies. The egg may be very small as in humans, much larger as in hens. Ostrich egg is the largest. This is one of the very interesting point. Buzo recalls that the size of eggs in animals varies. Yes, the egg size of the animals are not the same in size. Their size is variable. So the egg may be very small as in human. In the human, the size of the egg is very small, and it is much larger in the hens. And the largest one is the ostrich egg. The egg cell of the ostrich, that is the largest cell. So here, fertilization. Let's see fertilization. Fertilization is nothing. It is the fusion of male and female gametes. That is called fertilization. So let's see. The first step in the process of reproduction is the fusion of a sperm and an ovum. So in the first step in the process of reproduction, particularly in the sexually reproducing animals, the first step is reproduction. First step for reproduction is the fusion of a sperm and an ovum. When sperms come in contact with an egg, one of the sperms may fuse with the egg. Such fusion of the egg and the sperm is called fertilization. So fusion of the sperm cell and an ovum, that is called fertilization. So in figure number 9.5 we can see the fertilization. So during fertilization, the nuclei of the sperm and the egg fuse to form a single nucleus. So this results in the formation of a fertilized egg or zygote. The fertilized egg is also known as zygote. So in figure number 9.6, we can see here, here is the egg cell. This is the egg cell. Then here sperm cells comes in terms of thousands, in terms of millions. Then only one sperm cell fertilize. At the time of fertilization, only one sperm cell will fertilize with an egg cell or ovum. So then after fertilization, that means the fertilized egg is known as the zygote. So just after fertilization, then zygote is formed. So here picture shows how do fertilization takes place. So fertilization takes place with the fusion of an egg and an sperm cell. So you know that the zygote is the beginning of a new individual. So zygote is the beginning of a new individual. Then from the zygote, that means the fertilized egg. Fertilized egg means the egg cell that has been fused with sperm cell, one sperm cell, that is called zygote. So zygote is the beginning of a new individual. So from the zygote, different processes will follow and a new young baby will form. So let's continue. Here, figure number 9.6, you can see zygote. Zygote is nothing, it is just after the fusion of male gamete and female gamete. That means male gamete means sperm and female gamete means egg. So zygote is nothing, it is the cell just after the fusion of the male and female gametes. So here the nuclei of the egg and nuclei of the sperm cell, they are combined. Fusing nuclei takes place in the zygote. So fusion of the nucleus of the egg cell and nucleus of the sperm cell takes place in the zygote. So the process of fertilization is the meeting of an egg cell from the mother and a sperm cell from the father. So fertilization is the meeting of an egg cell from the mother and a sperm cell from the father. So the new individual inherits some characteristics from the mother and some from the father. So look at your brother or sister, see if you can recognize some characters in them similar to those of your mother or your father. So in the case of the human reproduction, say we know the process of fertilization. The process of fertilization is the meeting of an egg cell from the mother and a sperm cell from the father. So egg cell and sperm cell after meeting, that means after fusion, then fusing of nuclei of egg cell and sperm cell is shown here as it is called zygote. So new individual will inherit some characteristics from the father and some from the mother. So the young baby will be similar with the father or mother because the characters will be inherited from half from the mother and half from the father. Okay. Fertilization which takes place inside the female body is called internal fertilization. So here we know fertilization Fertilization which takes place inside the female body is called internal fertilization, and internal fertilization occurs in many animals including humans, cows, dogs, and hens. So in such type of animals, internal fertilization takes place. In the next page, let's see. Textbook page number 128. Have you heard of test tube babies? Here, let's see about the test tube baby. Buzo and Pehle teacher once told them in the class that in some women oviducts are blocked. These women are unable to bear babies because sperms cannot reach the egg for fertilization. In such cases, doctors collect freshly released eggs and sperms and keep them together for a few hours for IVF. So the full form of IVF is in vitro fertilization. IVF or in vitro fertilization. This means fertilization outside the body. In case fertilization occurs, the zygote is allowed to develop for about a week, and then it is placed in the mother's uterus. Complete development takes place in the uterus, and the baby is born like any other baby. Babies born through this technique are called test tube babies. This term is actually misleading because babies cannot grow in test tubes. So, we have heard about the test tube babies. So, test tube babies here, Pehle, Buzo and Pehle teacher once told them in the class that in some of the women, oviducts are blocked. So, in such type of women, they are unable to bear babies because sperms cannot reach the egg for fertilization. So, in such cases, doctors collect freshly released egg from the mother and sperms from the father and keep them together for a few hours for IVF. That means in vitro fertilization, fertilization outside the body. And in such case, fertilization occurs, then the zygote is allowed to develop for about a week, and then it is placed in the mother's uterus. Complete development takes place in the uterus, and the baby is born like any other baby. So babies born through this technique are called test tube babies. So this term is actually misleading because babies cannot grow in test tube. So test tube baby, here there is some misleading term. Babies cannot develop in test tube. So actually in the test tube, say egg from the mother and a sperm from the father has to be taken, and it is kept together in the test tube for about 1 week, and zygote is formed after fertilization, and that zygote is allowed to develop for about a week, and then it is placed in the mother's uterus, and in that way a new young baby is born. So that term is called test tube babies. Next, let's continue. You will be surprised to know that in many animals, fertilization takes place outside the body of the female. In these animals, fertilization takes place in water. let us find out how this happens. So in many animals, fertilization takes place outside the body of the female. So how it happens, let's see. Activity 9.1 here. Visit some ponds or slow flowing streams during spring or rainy season. Look out for clusters of frogs, eggs floating in water. Write down the color and the size of the eggs. Color and size of the eggs we have to write down. So for this activity, we have to visit a pond or slow flowing stream during spring or rainy season. Then you have to look out for clusters of frogs, eggs floating in water. So most of the frogs' eggs, they are floating in water in clusters, in groups. So write down the color and the size of the eggs. Then during spring or rainy season, frogs and toads move to ponds and slow flowing streams when the male and female come together in water. The female lays hundreds of eggs. Unlike hen's egg, frog's egg is not covered by a shell and it is comparatively very delicate. A layer of jelly holds the eggs together and provides protection to the eggs. So in figure number 9.7, eggs of frog is shown here. So this is the picture when you visit to a nearby pond, and when you see the egg of the frog, you can clearly see the egg of frogs are together, and it is protected by a jelly-like substance. As the eggs are laid, the male deposits sperms over them. Each sperm swims randomly in water with the help of its long tail. The sperms come in contact with the eggs. This results in fertilization. This type of fertilization, in which the fusion of a male and a female gamete takes place outside the body of the female, is called external fertilization. External fertilization. It is very common in aquatic animals such as fish, starfish, etc. So external fertilization is very common in aquatic animals like fish and starfish. So in this case, the eggs are laid, the male deposits sperms over them, and each sperm swims randomly in water with the help of its long tail. The sperms come in contact with the eggs, and this results in fertilization. This type of fertilization, that means fusion of the male and female gamete, takes place outside the body of the female. That is called external fertilization. So such type of external fertilization we can see in the animals like fish and starfish, particularly in the aquatic animals. Here, why do fish and frogs lay eggs in hundreds, whereas a hen lays only one egg at a time? Why do fish and frogs lay eggs in hundreds, whereas a hen lays only one egg at a time? This is a question. So let's discuss later. So in the next page, In the next page, let's see. Though these animals lay hundreds of eggs and release millions of sperms, all the eggs do not get fertilized and develop into new individuals. This is because the eggs and sperms get exposed to water, movement, wind, and rainfall. Also, there are other animals in the pond which may feed on eggs. Thus, production of large number of eggs and sperms is necessary to ensure fertilization of at least a few of them. So here is the answer. Though these animals lay hundreds of eggs and release millions of sperms, all the eggs do not get fertilized and develop into new individuals. So this is because the eggs and sperms get exposed to water. Eggs and sperms, both the eggs and sperms are exposed to water, movement, wind, and rainfall. And also, there are other animals in the pond which may feed on egg of the frog. So thus, production of large number of eggs and sperms is necessary to ensure fertilization of at least a few of them. So production of more number of eggs and more number of sperms is necessary to ensure fertilization of at least a few of them. So that is why most of the fish and frogs, they lay eggs in hundreds, and whereas a hen lays only one egg at a time. So this is the answer. So in figure number textbook page number 129, let's continue. How could a single cell become such a big individual? This is also one interesting question. How could a single cell become such a big individual? A single cell, that means after the fusion of male and female gametes, that means after the fusion of sperm cell and egg cell, then it becomes a zygote. Zygote is nothing, it is the fertilized egg cell. Then from that fertilized egg cell, a new young individual is developed after several cell divisions like cleavage and say after organogenesis. Different processes takes place inside the uterus. So and at last it becomes a big individual. So here, development of embryo, let's see. Development of embryo. Development of embryo. Fertilization results in the formation of zygote, which begins to develop into an embryo. So just after fertilization, formation of zygote begins, and figure number 9.8a is shown here. And let's see. The zygote divides repeatedly to give rise to a ball of cells. In figure number 9.8b, let's see. The cells then begin to form groups that develop into different tissues and organs of the body. This developing structure is termed an embryo. The embryo gets embedded in the wall of the uterus for further development. Figure number 9.8c, we can see the embryo continues to develop in the uterus. It gradually develops body and body parts in the next page, such as hands, legs, head, eyes, ears, etc. The stage of the embryo in which all the body parts can be identified is called a fetus. So in figure number 9.9, when the development of the fetus is complete, the mother gives birth to the baby. So this is the fetus in the uterus. It is shown in this picture. Internal fertilization takes place in hens also. But do hens give birth to babies like human beings and cows? No. You know that they do not. Then how are chicks born? Let us find out. Soon after fertilization, the zygote divides repeatedly and travels down the oviduct. As it travels down, many protective layers are formed around it. The hard shell that you see in a hen's egg is one such protective layer. So, after the hard shell is formed around the developing embryo, the hen finally lays the egg. The embryo takes about 3 weeks to develop into a chick. You must have seen the hen sitting on the eggs to provide sufficient warmth. And did you know that development of the chick takes place inside the egg shell during this period? So after the chick is completely developed, it bursts open the egg shell. In animals which undergo external fertilization, development of the embryo takes place outside the female body. The embryos continue to grow within their egg coverings. After the embryos develop, the eggs hatch. You must have seen numerous tadpoles swimming in ponds and streams. So we have seen numerous tadpoles swimming in ponds and streams. So in the previous page, here figure number 9.8a, zygote formation and development of an embryo from the zygote. This is the figure number A. Here is the uterus and this is the ovary, and from the ovary mature egg produced by a process called ovulation, and then fertilization takes place, and here is the zygote. And in figure number B, balls of cells, that is enlarged. Balls of cells are here. And in figure number C, embedding of the embryo in the uterus enlarged. In the uterus, embedding or developing embryo is formed in this way, in the uterus wall. So these are what about the development of embryo. So in the next chapter, let's continue for today. Let's stop here. Thank you all.